building on what I was saying in the middle of the night about how to organize people, it is really dividing and ruling. You ask people to give an account of themselves. You ask them to identify themselves as moral beings. So people with religion will say, depending on what their religion is, they'll say, I'm Jewish, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm Buddhist, I'm Hindu. And if they don't have a religion, they will have to say they're atheist. And they will have to say that they are good atheists who speak the truth and can see reason, and they're not murderers, thieves, sex offenders, and that sort of thing. So this is the revolutionary new idea that I propose, which I guess most people won't be able to understand. So I see Jay Walker's in the chat saying that I'm talking nonsense, but of course he's the one who's been talking nonsense since all this time. I've been trying to work him out. Is he mentally ill or just perverse? Who can tell? Probably he doesn't even know himself. So my assessment of him is that he already supports secular Koranism, but he can't support it because it's not safe for him to do it. He's not the only one. There are people who say to me, I can think of a woman who said, yes, I agree with you, but I'm not supporting you because, well, you understand my position, blah, 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 blah. And I said to her, well, you're just waiting for it to be safe before you feel you can support secular Koranism. Well, thank you for acknowledging this anyway. I mean, yes, it's disappointing, but I have to take the rough with the smooth. But Jay keeps haunting me like he thinks he deserves respect. Why would he deserve respect when he can't even acknowledge, privately anyway, that, oh, well, I agree with you, but, you understand my circumstances, my job, or whatever. Usually people say, it's my job. If I say it, that anything of what you do, if I repeat your controversial comments, if I ask your questions, I'm going to lose my job, and then, what am I to say to my wife and my family deprived of its primary earner, my family, destitute, on the streets, mortgage unpaid, whatever. So for these people, you can at least understand what their position is. Obviously, they can't render themselves homeless. They can't say things that would make their wife divorce them. But Jay isn't in such a position at all. He's not married. He doesn't have a job. He's just larking around with white, middle-class, Islamophobic women who would ostracize him in a heartbeat if he were to talk about secular Koranism. That's why he's always here complaining about all these pathetic losers that the men like him who mix in those circles, the white, liberal, middle class, middle-aged women who have all the privileges, who can talk about life as if they knew everything and commanded everything, and they do in a way because their husbands are afraid of them. Their husbands would be affluent men who have a certain position, a certain income, enough property to make them think twice about losing their property and their reputation to a malicious wife who who can divorce him for no particular reason. So these are the men who are terrified of their women. Maybe they're afraid of their daughters taking against what they say, blocking them on Facebook or whatever. So I do understand the predicament of white men, whether they be low education, low status, and low information like Jay, or senior politicians who are similarly terrified of antagonizing their daughters and their wives, or even their seniors who may be female. So I totally get it. So it makes it quite clear that Jay, who doesn't have a job, who only participates in leisure activities with his white female associates, is simply refusing to give up his, well, what he has achieved. What has he achieved? He's not, doesn't really have a career, he doesn't really have a business, his achievement is basically having sexual access to white middle-class women, and he's not going to give it up to support secular Koranism, obviously not. It's his only achievement in life, I guess. And he's not going to give it up for secular Koranism. And he's not the only one. I'm not particularly singling him out. But I understand the psychology of these nihilists who know there's something wrong, but who won't defend it. Jay has joked about fleeing to Mexico, but he knows that he will get no respect wherever he flees. He can flee to, well, anywhere at all. I mean, the reputation of the white man is at an all-time low because other men of other nations and races have more or less worked out what's wrong with them. They can't defend their statues. They can't defend a principle. They can't even defend their right to say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, even though they are, So here we have it. We're on the subject of pronouns now. So even if you were an individual who was born with male sex organs, you can, the government will collude with you to, and will give you a gender recognition certificate that says you are the opposite sex to the sex organs you were born with. And this is now such common practice and now so accepted that primary school children are being taught that it is an acceptable lifestyle choice to decide to masquerade as a member of the opposite sex. And there are plans now to forbid parents from telling their children off, trying to persuade them off, another way. And we know that Jay doesn't talk about these things. He doesn't dare talk about these things. He's only here because he's got no one else to talk to, right? He's only got his white middle-class women, and it's getting bad. That's why he comes back time and again when he can't stand it anymore, when he notices that there is one other word he cannot say, one other idea he cannot express, one other question he cannot answer. That's why he keeps coming back. I don't pretend that he's in love with me, although some people have suggested that. He only comes back when, well, he wants to come and express his hatred of the immigrants, his hatred of the religion of the that the immigrants bring with them, and So why does he come? He seeks validation. I'm not going to give him the validation that he craves because he doesn't deserve it. He's a man who sees all this happening, and he can't and won't do anything about it other than to come back here and throw rocks at me and damn me with faint praise. He thinks that by saying that secular Koranism has a few good points, he thinks I should be grovelling to him and be so pathetically grateful that I cease to call him an Islamophobe. Why would I? He is an Islamophobe. Western civilization is dying of Islamophobia. Why would I even stop for a moment calling people like Jay and his associates Islamophobes? There's a price to pay for your irrational hatred and fear of Islam and Muslims. So if Jay really believed in God, he would know that good and evil come from God. And even if he thinks Muslims are evil, he would know that God, if he exists, would have sent them to his country for a reason. But he's not really capable of making these associations, and that's why I get a little impatient. And I know that Rabbi Mizrahi is always saying these things, and Jay has said previously that he saw the value in what Rabbi Mizrahi was saying, the points he makes. But perhaps he's forgotten, or we know he can't be trusted to say anything consistently. So he might even say something that's true occasionally, and then he will change his mind and opt for the falsehood that replaces the truth he inadvertently blurted out. Now, Jay is interesting because a lot of men are like him. They refuse to acknowledge the reality of their predicament. And their pride prevents them from taking it from me. Not that I think he would take it from anyone who was white or male or senior to him. I don't think, it would make it more acceptable. He will be, saying all kinds of things to any white male prepared to say the things that I say. And I know they're not, which is why they are so contemptible. Jay complains that I show my hostility and contempt and hatred. Yes, I do. Why shouldn't I? It is the only thing that drives home my message. Men like him deserve no respect at all. They're not men. Men defend things. They defend territory. They defend property. They defend their women. They defend their children. They don't just. You see, he wouldn't even defend his harem, assuming that Jay had an harem. He wouldn't defend it. It'd be over for him in a heartbeat. The moment another male rolled out to take his harem, he wouldn't defend anything. I mean, and that is really what's wrong with all these men who think like him, and there are an awful lot of them. So it is true that the men who who won't accept secular Koranism, even though they know they have nothing better, are Islamophobes. They can't deny it, and they hate to hear it. They know that they can say nothing convincing, nothing that would convince anyone to defend themselves against the accusations of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And the most contemptible thing about Jay is that he still pretends to believe in God. A lot of people do. I know they still pretend to believe in God because perhaps it's an instinct, some sort of comfort blanket. We've known each other for quite a few years. There's been enough time for it to all sink in that I am saying Christianity is kaput. And I am saying that liberalism that replaced Christianity is also kaput. And I'm saying there is nothing that would replace kaput Christianity and liberalism, but secular Koranism. And I have given you people all this time to come up with something better, and you can't. It's more. We'll set up our little, micro parties. And keep voting, keep on voting, carry on voting. Or we can fantasize about pogrom. Of course, these men are contemptible, and contempt should be shown for them at every opportunity so they have nowhere to hide. They already feel bad enough already. Imagine that the best of them, if they were Mr. Moneybags, they would have to put up with this shit. Do any of these billionaires talk about, do they dare even say what they really think? We don't know, do they? Do we? Or Trump says it, but then he doesn't have the support he needs to get things done. People openly defy him. Well, what's to be done when people won't do what you ask them to do, what you lawfully have the authority to ask them to do? You must conclude that there is something wrong, that something is broken. It's like when you wish to raise your arm, you can't, because I guess some muscle, some bone is broken. Maybe you suffer from motor neuron disease, and I'm saying the matriarchy is motor neuron disease. It's moral motor neuron disease, but people like Jay don't want a cure. Because they're getting on a bit. They think, well, whatever's left of Western civilization, there's enough to keep them going until they finally pop their clogs. And after they pop their clogs, they don't care what happens after them. And Jay keeps expecting me to give him respect. Why? Why would I? It's not just Jay, of course. It's the other bigger YouTubers with much bigger channels. They can't talk about it. But Jay thinks it's a failure on my part that they won't engage with me. He expects me to behave like him, a nihilist, telling lies, changing his mind. It's very interesting how people who have no advice to give just fall over themselves to want to give you bad advice. I guess it's a human foible. I know a travel writer who said that there he was asking the way to somewhere or other, and the locals, who didn't really know, wanted to tell him where to go, even though they didn't really know. Even though they didn't really know the way. So Jay is like that. He's got a big fat ego, and nothing would please him more than to say that he was the one who made me give up on secular Koranism. That he was the one who destroyed secular Koranism with his pathetic nihilism and his atheism, LARPing as a Christian who doesn't believe that Jesus is God, and that there is an afterlife. I mean, anybody who is capable of using his or her powers of deduction would know that Jay is full of shit. But I think everybody knows that, really. They just like seeing the Islamophobic clown popping up from time to time with his big Islamophobic shoes to trip over them and to fall on his nose. That is what he prefers to do. He's done it for all his life. He wants to continue doing it, and he expects praise from me. He is only useful insofar as he is able to give me opportunities of showing my contempt for him. That is what his purpose in life is. And he represents Western men. A small minority of them feel they should do something, and they do little things like, oh, I'll be Muslim. But I won't say things that will upset people. I'll just pray and hope everything will be okay when I'm dead, and I hope I go to the other place. But in the meantime, I'll not ask for whatever I need to make anything work. So in a way, they're no better than Jay. They might use a slightly more subtle vocabulary, but they have no solutions other than their own narrow preoccupations. Like, well, I don't want to antagonize people too much in case they get upset with me, but I understand that people only act on their emotions these days. I mean, okay, they're supposed to act on their reason, but most of them choose not to. They only act on their feelings of fear and hatred, and they don't particularly want to analyze their feelings because either they can't, or they won't, or they need therapy. And I'm happy to give Jay the therapy he clearly needs. There must be something wrong with him if he can't make up his mind after all these years. If he can't make up his mind after all these years, about whether Christianity is kaput, there's something wrong with him. It's either a learning disability or a mental health issue or a defect of character. But Jay isn't the only one, of course. And lots of people like that who are empty inside, empty of all principle, filled only with their pride. Their white pride. Even as they cannot explain anything. They can't explain why their politicians are so corrupt. Other than blaming Jews. That's all they can do. He blamed Jews. Jay likes to hang out with people like that until they're tired of him. Because even they tire of him changing his mind. And so this means that a lot of people, like Jay, it's not just him, are basically going around mumbling to themselves. One moment saying yes, and the other saying no, to the same question. So if you ask him if Christianity is coupled, he'll say, yeah, but no. But he needs validation. So unless he accepts that there is no solution but secular Koranism, and even if he did, who would believe for a second that he was serious? The next moment he would say, I was only joking. You should have known me by now that, you can't take anything I say seriously. And that is, of course, contemptible. And I will continue to show my contempt for him. It may be a genuine learning disability. It may be a genuine mental health issue. But, if all the men, virtually all the men in your civilization are like that, then, well, it's not going to work out. So my little idea last night was basically forcing people to choose a religion. And this is how it operates in Indonesia, which is an empire, consisting of all these different religious groups. So you basically have to choose to be, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu. There may be other categories, but you can't. But there's no group for atheists, right? Because Pancasila is the idea that it's actually no hide. It says you are required to believe in one God. But it hasn't got a group for atheists. So it's anyone who refuses to choose, Christian, Muslim. But and also interestingly, there is no group for Jews because they didn't have a group. Well, apparently, there are not enough Jews to make them a group for. It's the same in China. They don't actually acknowledge the existence of Jews. I wonder if Daniel Sienkiewicz is talking about doing this, not actually acknowledging the existence of Jews. And I remember Rabbi Tovia Singer, basically saying that he was saddened that all those Jews in Indonesia who had to choose between being Christian and Muslim, they chose to be identified with a Christian group. And he was, sad and possibly disgusted by those Jews in Indonesia choosing to identify themselves with the Christians, because Christianity is the antithesis of Judaism, and those Jews were not acknowledging this fact. And their reasons for not acknowledging this fact was because they wanted to identify themselves as Western rather than, with the locals. So they were being snobs. They thought it was better to be identified with, being European, being American, being Western, being Christian, than to be identified with being Muslim. Even though many elements of Islam and Judaism are, well, the important elements of Judaism and Islam I meant to say that Judaism and Islam share many important characteristics, such as the oneness of God. So under Panchasila, atheists in Indonesia have no group to go to, and if they, if they're asked, I don't know, by a public official, I suppose, what group they are, and they say, oh, I don't belong to any group, then they will be, considered a member of a marginalised group, a bit like the Untouchables, because really, if you think of the Hindu caste system, the Dalits are actually people outside the caste system. The people who, are only fit for cleaning toilets and washing dead bodies, those people. So if you don't even have a group, you are actually being marginalised. But my idea in the West, under secular Koranism, is I would do the same thing, and I would give atheists a group. So I'll be kinder to them than the Indonesian government is. I would put atheists and agnostics in one group. So at least they can have a group. So, I'm being fair, aren't I? So I wonder what would a person like Jay be doing? Would he identify himself as being Christian? We don't know. We never know what Jay will decide, and then he will change his mind and display the caprice of a woman. But if you divide people in your country in this way, you can quite easily deal with them, and this is what I propose to do. Obviously, if you go to a job interview, right? You go to a job interview, and you have to fill in this form, and they'll ask you, well, which group are you? Are you in the atheist group, or are you a Jew, Christian, Muslim, whatever? Now, what do you think? What do you think an employer? How would an employer regard somebody who calls himself an atheist or an agnostic? This is actually a revolutionary idea. I know a lot of atheists and will hate it. I know they will. So employers would think, well, with all these other groups, these Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, at least I know, what these religions are. But these atheists and these agnostics, they well, I don't know what stupid shit they believe in. It's usually pretty stupid shit. Maybe the Wiccans, or well, we don't know. They might practice black magic. It's a lot of people have. They might be pantheists, Luciferians, or what other stupid shit that they come up with. That is obviously subversive. So if you were an employer, you would be, even if I'm giving you this special group that you can belong to, atheists and agnostics, but they'll know that you'll probably tell lies. You'll be to a lesser or greater degree, you'll be somebody like Jay, who can't make up his mind, who will tell lies and believe in nonsense and bully you. If he thinks he can get away with it, he'll bully you. If he thinks, well, you're just one person, and he's got, all these Islamophobes surrounding you. So how do you check out the moral probity of atheists and agnostics? You'd have to ask them, well, do you have any moral principles? And they'll probably think and not be able to come up with much. Can you imagine Jay answering a question like that? He won't be able to say anything, and he'll just pretend to be Christian. So we can help these people, these atheists and agnostics, and say, well, do you agree that people shouldn't murder, shouldn't steal, shouldn't be sex offenders? And they'll probably say yes. I mean, they might really mean it, or they're just sort of, well, I'm not going to say I approve of murder, thieving, and rape. They're not going to say that, because they won't get the job, right? They won't get the job, and they'll tell lies. These nihilists who have no principles, they'll be telling lies, and then they'll be changing their lies, and then they'll be confusing themselves. And then they'll be pretending that, though they've said all the things that you would identify as being anti-Semitic and Islamophobic, they'll say, oh, but I really like Muslims because I like fucking Muslim women. I have no problem with Jews, but whenever they say they're God's chosen people, I get so triggered I can't get over it, even after years and years and years. And they also want to ban circumcision, and they're too thick to realize that, if you say these things, and it just means that, you don't really like Jews. You want them to, get out of your country. You want them to feel unwelcome. So, well, it might fool other people, but not me. So why does Jay pretend to believe in God? Well, because he knows. I mean, he would know that, well, if he under such a system as I propose, he probably he wouldn't want to be, in that group of atheists and agnostics. So he'd be pretending to be Christian. But then he can also be dealt with in this way, which is to be asked, well, do you believe that Jesus is God? He can't give us a straight answer, because his answer is yes and no. He says on the one hand that he doesn't think Jesus is divine, and then in the next word he will talk about Jesus as if he were his best mate, right? And then he will talk about entering the kingdom of heaven as if God were his best mate. So we don't know if he's serious or not, But it's easy to dismantle the system of belief of Christians, because they can't explain to you why Jesus is God, or why Christianity is not idolatry. They will keep avoiding the question. And it's not just the likes of Jay. We know that the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury are just as helpless against these accusations as Jay is. Just as helpless. And so it is imperative that Muslims and Jews who don't want to live in a failed state point out the idolatry and blasphemy of Christianity. But they don't. They don't because they're scared too, right? They're more afraid of their idolatrous and blasphemous Christian overlords than they are of God himself. So they're not doing it. Not doing it. So if God exists, he would be just as disappointed and angry with these Jews and Muslims who ought to know better about the idolatry and blasphemy of Christianity, but who have never once in the entire history of Christianity pointed out to Christians the idolatry and blasphemy of Christianity. It's for their own good, really. I mean, if you're a Jew or a Muslim and you live in the West, you're going to be totally fucked by the intersectionality and the degeneracy it causes with your children being taught to be transgender. You probably won't be having any grandchildren, right? Your children. So your daughter becomes an unmarried mother of illegitimate offspring. Your son sires illegitimate offspring, and then if you have another son, he might be gaily married. If you have another daughter, she might be gaily married. If you have another son, he might decide he wants to masquerade as a woman. You have yet another daughter, she might decide she wants to masquerade as a man. So does Jay even have trusted male associates to discuss these things with? He doesn't, does he? He doesn't. See, a lot of these men who mix exclusively with women, or almost exclusively with women, they have no man, no male associate, no male role model to talk about these things. They can't discuss these things because, well, they're too afraid of each other, well, I don't know. I don't know what it is, really. I don't see how you can live your life and not talk about these things with anyone, or not work it out for yourself, and then not say anything about it, and then expect respect. Jay expects respect from me, thinking it's enough for him to damn me with vain praise and say, oh, there's a few good points about secular Koranism, but I can never be expected to risk anything by supporting you. And even if I were to say I'm a secular Koranist, I can never be trusted to not go back on my word. And since most Western men are like that, why should they expect respect? They really are beyond contempt. And as for the nationalists, they can't talk to me about it either, can they? Because most of them, these people with the bigger channels, Millennial Woes, Ed Dutton, in Finland, joining NATO, governed by some weird triumvirate of ministers who are, not supported by the Finnish. Are they subject to the curse of core? I don't know. Ed Dutton has been a little insolent in the same way that Jay has been consistently insolent towards me. Ed Dutton probably thought it was a smart move to find a Finnish wife and live in Finland, but he hasn't escaped, has he? What about the people he's been talking to? They know about secular Koranism. Of course they know about secular Koranism. They all know about secular Koranism because I have been in nationalism for, well, a decade. And even if I don't talk about secular Koranism to you, you will have heard it spoken about by others. So there's something rotten in the heart and mind of Western man. And that is why he can't solve his problems. He can't say anything that is true. He can only make up neologisms, new words like boomer truth regime. What else? Red caping. All these stupid words when they are perfectly good words in English already that can be used to describe whatever they think is wrong with their country, their government. So what the morons and vegetables could be doing that is useful is go to people who have bigger channels than me, like Ed Dutton. Who else? Academic agent. They're supposed to be your representatives, you know. If you think you're too low IQ, as morons and vegetables in the chat, then you can, ask them, super chat these people and ask them what they think is wrong with them. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Why can't you talk? Why can't you speak the truth? Why can't you even speak what you believe to be the truth? You can just say, oh, it's because I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm just a lost boy who's scared about what Nanny's going to do to him. You might not change your nappy and then you'll get nappy rash, right? You really have no choice. You know you have no choice. Everything points to the fact that you need a moral system. Explain to you, Panchasila. It's no hide. It's even no hide. So and even if you don't believe in God, you will know that if you want anything done, you'd have to go to the supreme authority in your country. Yes, that's what the Chinese did, even now they kind of do it. The idea that, if some corrupt local official is oppressing you, you as a Chinese peasant can go to Beijing and you can complain about your corrupt local official to the emperor and he'll sort things out. That is the theory. So you don't have to believe in God, but what is above the emperor? Well, of course, God, if he exists. Providence is another substitute word for God. The God that Jay is supposed to believe in, but you see, if you did believe in God, then you already have the tools, the mental tools to fix your problem. You would already have worked it out, as I have. If God exists, then everything has an explanation. You'll be punished, obviously, being punished for your sins. So when Jay talks about God, I always make a point of asking him, is it the Abrahamic God that you believe in? And I never get an answer because he doesn't know, or he won't tell me. What is this God that Jay keeps claiming to be best mates with? Jesus? Or the papa of Jesus? Jay will remember Church of Entropy making up her conceptual idol, when she went on about pantheism. So, just like Jay, Church of Entropy understood that you dignify yourself by claiming to believe in a God, claiming to be atheist. Just makes you stupid and unprotected. Your existence doesn't get dignified. You don't have a protected characteristic under the Equality Act 2010. So this means that Jews, Christians, anybody with a religion and that they claim to believe in, they will they can say, oh, you're being mean to me because you don't like Jews, you don't like Muslims, you don't like Hindus, you don't, but usually in practice it's only the Jews and Muslims who complain. Even the political classes. Well, the political classes don't respect Christianity because they know it's stupid, right? They do know it's stupid. They only pretend to, it's like, what did British Airways do? They actually said, anybody Christian working for British Airways are not allowed to show, they're not allowed to wear their cross in a visible way. So Christians are even now being discriminated against in their own country. But then their country isn't Christian, it's really liberal, and liberal is the dominant ideology, but it's also rotting into intersectionality and the moral sewage of the matriarchy that you guys are not up to challenging or questioning. So Jay doesn't believe in God. He only pretends to because he knows it will give him some kind of credibility if he goes to church and says he goes to church, and even though he doesn't believe in any of the nonsense, and he wouldn't be able to give you a coherent explanation of anything. The government doesn't really respect Christians or Christianity in this country. We know from the way that successive archbishops of Canterbury have behaved. They don't believe in Christianity either. They're mostly leftists, or they just follow orders. So as a religion, it is kaput. And if you disagree, you won't be able to argue convincingly that it isn't. So it is literally kaput. And if you won't acknowledge it, then it's because you know what would happen if you did. You would have to say, well, Christianity is kaput, and its replacement of liberalism is also rotting into intersectionality. Well, we need help. We need a replacement. We need a moral system that allows us to rear the next generation who won't turn up to be, fucked in the head and wanting to masquerade as members of the opposite sex and encouraged by the government to do it. I mean, if you can't do that, if you can't even defend this principle, you actually don't deserve to carry on as a civilization. You know that. And the problem is, of course, that most of you in the chat are unmarriageable bachelors, so you don't have primary school children to worry about. Of course, you don't have grandchildren to worry about. You don't care because it doesn't affect you. I mean, there are Muslims who try and organize, but there's still not enough of them, right? Still not enough of them. So we'll just have to see, if enough white men in the West can work out what the problem is. I mean, they don't need to work it out because I've worked it out all for them, and they can reach the conclusions I've reached, and they can make the arguments I've made. They can force the people above them, morons and vegetables in the chat will know that the people above them are the people who are the YouTubers who, have live streams, and they can post in their live streams and ask them, have they got a better idea than secular Koranism? It will just trigger all these, Ed Dutton, who else? The distributors, New Culture Forum. Yeah, they've hidden me in the chat. Well, you can go back and visit Luke Ford and people like that if you want. But Luke is another J, basically. That's why he's so infuriating. It's like, yeah, he ought to know. But you see, we know that in a way, Luke is like Jay. He laughs as a Jew in a way Jay laughs as a Christian. They don't really believe, neither of them really believe in it. They only do it, because they think, if I'm a Jew, I can say all these things that these lower level Christians are not allowed to say without being identified as white nationalists. I mean, that's Luke's game, really. And Jay's game is similar to that. So if you want to address the issue, then now things you can do. I mean, you can sacrifice your little account. They'll probably hide you for asking about secular Koranism. But you could all, collectively just go from one YouTube channel to another and ask them, well, when are you going to have Claire on to talk about secular Koranism? You could do that. And you could say, well, I'm not going to be funding your super chats anymore if you don't. You could do that. You can actually have some power to dismay and distress these YouTubers who really haven't been providing you with a good enough service. Unless you call people who pander to your prejudices nationalists. They're not promoting nationalism. They're just panderers to your prejudices. Oh, hi, Muslim apologist. I wouldn't mind having you on. I can post a link if you are up to it. That would be nice. But I know it's a bit late. I don't know. Sorry, I'm looking at my Twitter notifications. I hope Muslim activists will push their advantage. I mean, these white men, they really haven't got an argument. And the best way of doing da'wah is to remind them that they haven't got an argument. I know they'll hate you, but the emotional response is the one that won't be forgotten. Yeah, it may be the same monologue every day, but you still come back for it. It's part of your therapy, isn't it? About Luke Ford, Colin Colenso, I mean, wasn't that how we met? I mean, I have to acknowledge that he, kind of launched me in America. So I don't mind, I don't mind acknowledging that. I can give credit where it's due. It's a Korean man who says, after hearing your ramblings with the American convert guy lately, I'm more convinced SK is the way to go. It's like a reverse process of spiritual belief. You test the method first. Yes. Thank you for seeing that. It's the intermediate step. You don't go full Muslim immediately. You go, I think I should be allowed to, ask a few questions like, is it really true that Islam would only work with Sharia? And obviously it's true that it can, you can't have Islam without Sharia. As a minority, this is something for Muslim immigrants too. They have to consider what they did. It's like, actually, you'll feel even more stupid than the people than the indigenous whites. It's like you actually cross continents and oceans to get to the West, and then you're going to lose your identity. And if you're Muslim and you hate Jews for voting Democrat, your future is going to be some brown person in the Globo Homo West voting for the Labour Party or the Democrats. But as a brown person, that's your future, and your descendants will be gaily married or trans or unmarried mothers and unmarried fathers. That's what you have to look forward to. Is this what you left your country for? Is it? Is it better? It's something for you to think about too, Muslim immigrant. Come on, Muslim immigrant. Secular Koranism is also in your interests. You're just too scared to discuss it because you need the white man to say it's okay for you to promote secular Koranism because we're promoting secular Koranism and we're not even Muslim. If you say that to these Muslim immigrants, and they'll come along, but you have to understand that these people are scared. They're not going to be saying anything weird. They just want to go with the mainstream because they want to get on and be something in the new country that they've come to, and they're only going to go for mainstream ideas. And so, they're actually looking to white people to say that secular Koranism is okay, or the thinking, or the talking about it maybe being okay. Thank you for saying that secular Koranism is ingenious. So it's not just for white people, okay, it's for anybody who wants descendants, who wants legitimate offspring, who will in turn have legitimate, who will present them with legitimate grandchildren. This is what this transcends race. Yes, it's universal and eternal. Yes, Korean man. I think you're a Korean man, aren't you? I think due to the European mindset, they need to go through the methodical, practical steps before they can embrace a spiritual side. Yes, because, okay, you need to read the Quran. It's like, it's crazy if you just, okay, I couldn't do that. Not even bother reading the Quran and just go straight to conversion. Well, I mean, that's just not me. So you'd have to read it, and it's only when you read the book of rules that you think, well, would it work for me? Is it fair enough? Does it make sense? Is it, all these things you need to do. And you and okay, I know that Muslims say the miracle that okay, what they say is what we think is evidence of God is the Quran, because it's such a wonderful book, and it's so this and it's so that. So, there it is. That's the evidence that you're supposed to examine. And once you read it, you will, and obviously you should be reading it like a lawyer reads the small print. And you don't even have to accept it. You can just ask, well, what do you think of the secular Koranism thing? Oh, yeah. Nick Fuentes is gay. I mean, it doesn't even surprise me at all. It doesn't surprise me. And even if he weren't gay, Nick Fuentes is not taking much advice from his elders, which means he's going to burn out. He's going to do something stupid that will destroy him and his movement. And also, he's not a theologian. He's just this, Catholic guy who wants social conservatism, and he can think of stunts to maybe get a bit of attention from time to time, but he hasn't got a solution that is credible, viable, believable. Nothing is required by people other than to discuss secular Koranism. I mean, it's something you want to do anyway. I know you do. Korean Mail says, I'd like to have Claire get some scholars on to show how inconsistent and just as fraudulent Judaism is along with Christianity. Okay, there is a video for, I'll find it for you, but it basically makes all the arguments for okay, it's basically dawah for Jews, and it says, I can't find it now. It's basically saying Jews are going to have a terrible afterlife if all the 36 capital offenses in the Torah are still live, because if you're a Jew, you're going to be guilty of at least one of them, particularly if you live outside Israel. And the logical thing for you to do, if you're a Jew and you believe in the afterlife and you don't want to be punished for being a citizen of a city that has gone astray, if you don't want to be punished for breaking the Sabbath, or just lots of little things get you the death penalty, then you would convert to Islam. And there have only been two communications by the Abrahamic God to humanity, and obviously, if you're being rational, you're going to choose a one that describes a better heaven and doesn't have so many punishments in this life. I mean, the Quran just says, it just affirms the principle of the death penalty, saying, yes, execute the criminal if the interests of justice require it. But, it's not like the 36 capital offenses of Judaism, which is sort of death for just almost everything. So the Jews have a problem, which maybe they can even resolve by acknowledging the the validity, the truth, the validity of my arguments. Why are you talking about Western? Okay, Christianity is the same everywhere. If you subscribe to the Trinity, so Orthodox Christianity is also based on the Trinity, and Unitarian Christianity is, well, it's American Christianity, and it's not a powerful church, and it won't get anywhere. I mean, you really you only have Islam and no-Haddism. And why would you choose no-Haddism if you have Islam? Unless you're an Islamophobe, right? And the danger of choosing no-Haddism, which doesn't forbid idolatry, is that you won't be addressing any of your debt problems. Because one thing that I kind of agreed with when I was talking to William was that if all Western nations decided to collectively adopt secular Koranism, then they can default on their debts. Just like that, one day. They do it all at the same time, and they can default on their debts and they can start again. What's to stop them from doing that? I mean, it's just crazy stupidity. This is a great idea, and it can be easily explained. And we're not being subversive, we're just asking, our elders and betters and the ruling classes why we can't do these things. Why not? And we first do it by going to the people immediately above us, people who have a channel if we don't have a channel, people who have a bigger channel if we only have a small channel, if we can just keep pushing the message upwards. It's very simple. I suppose it's nice that there's so many comments in the chat that I can barely read them. I kind of miss Jen, She was, I listened to her on Sunday and she was being so. I mean, Duvik really couldn't say anything. He tried to say something and it was just, Jen came down on him like a ton of bricks. You can't say that, you're going to endanger my channel. Yeah, she's Alison's supposed to have a appeal, but I don't know. I don't know what's happened. Thank you for remembering Vicky Pollard, Alan Bastard. Yes, William Brown is pretty. He's very solid, isn't he? He speaks clearly. he just has a sort of quiet masculinity. It's very reassuring. And he does talk about secular Koranism. I mean, a lot of Muslims just won't because they're scared. I know. I want to finish my thoughts. So, and I know a lot of the chat is nonsense. Colin Colenso pretends he fell in love with me in the Luke 4 chat. Yes, you can test any method. I mean, really, it's so simple. Usually, you know it's a behavioural addiction. It's a behavioural addiction of governments and therefore of entire civilizations. And also, the French Revolution happened because the French king spent too much money trying to fuck up the British by sponsoring the American Revolutionary War. And then they had to pay back, and the Catholic Church said we don't have to pay for it. It's not we didn't start it. I don't know what they said, but they wouldn't. And of course the warrior class said, well, you can't make us pay it, King. You can't make us pay it because we have the weapons, we have the men, and we are the people that you rely on for weapons and men. And if we refuse to do it for you, King, there's nothing you can do but to make the middle classes pay for it, to make the commoners pay for it. And so the French Revolution happened when the Third Estate was got a bit fed up about paying all those taxes. No, Jay, you're not coming on. It would just be a waste of time. Now, being gay it's cheap sex, okay? I don't think people should worry too much about it. It's like because we have this culture of saying, well, it's okay, it's all right if you experiment a bit. So a lot of people have taken a lot of this advice at its word and experimented. So a point to remember is that married sex is the most expensive form of sex, and everything else is a cheap substitute. And because married sex is the most expensive form of sex, you should respect it a bit more. I don't really want it to be a long stream. It's nearly 90 minutes now. Okay, I finally got to the end of the chat, so I can go now. So thank you all for coming. And I'll speak to you sometime soon. I have to make another I have to make a call soon. I am even expecting a call, so I can't carry on anyway. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening to me get things off my chest and giving me the opportunity of making my position even clearer.